Just recently, I sat down with a man named David Hampton. He had been a worship leader at a very large church. He actually wrote a section in my book, Mentoring Worship Leaders. But David is going to take us through a story in his life that happened to him. This is a little longer than a lot of the videos that we do here on My Worship Leading Coach. But I want you to hear his story because I think it's so important.
My wife and I moved to Nashville in '87, and we had my daughter in '89. I had 2 publishing deals eventually in Nashville as a songwriter. And I played for several Christian artists for the first few years that we were here. And then in '94, I took Christ Community as a job, Christ Community Church in Franklin, Tennessee. As a job, they were a church that was where we attended, and so I was invited to take over. They were finally ready to hire a full-time person, and it was kind of at that point in time, it was kind of a CCM church, kind of a contemporary Christian music congregation and a country music congregation, very heavy in entertainment and creatives and artists and creative types, filmmakers, and it was a very creative atmosphere, and it was very high energy. We did, I think, 5 services at one point on a Sunday, and so it was like jumping onto a hamster wheel that was already going 100 miles an hour, and it was a great opportunity, and I loved it, and I got to work with some of the most creative, talented people that I could ask to ever have. You know, if you screw up a job at a church in Nashville, Tennessee, it's your own fault because there's just your talent pool is too deep. You can do anything you want. The interesting thing about the way we did it, though, was that we could have people that weren't professionals working with people that were playing for Shania Twain or somebody. I mean, it was because I think we all had the common goal, the common good in mind, and everybody was very understanding of one another. And so we had people that were working on their careers and people that were moving like crazy in their careers, and it was great. It was a great experience with that creatively. And my wife was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1994, right after I took the job at Christ Community. We had just bought a house in Franklin, and I had just taken the job, and she was diagnosed with this MS issue, and our daughter was 5, and so I thought we were going to be kind of inconvenienced by it. It was going to be hard. It was going to kind of mess with her a little bit, but it wouldn't be too bad. The doctors had assured us it was probably a relapsing, remitting form of MS, and that she would be, definitely impaired at times, but there would be times that you wouldn't know anything was wrong with her at all, so we could still kind of go along with our lives and just kind of put up with the hiccups, and she was very determined and great about the fact that she wasn't going to let it slow her down, and all those things that determined people say when they get a diagnosis like that. And so we just plugged along, we just kind of went along and did life, and I worked hard, and she continued to work some, and but then things began to get more frequent. The flare-ups began to get more frequent, and she would have an exacerbation, but then she wouldn't come back as fast or as far from the exacerbation. So she'd be left with some impairments, and one thing would lead to another thing, and over a period of time, she went from, needing a cane to a walker to a wheelchair, and then we had a wheelchair access built into our home, and had a wheelchair accessible van, and I was becoming kind of a single parent. I mean, this is a very nutshell version of several years, but she was no longer able to drive, so I would work my schedule around taking my daughter to and from school or an event, and I would always take a video camera with me and try to record it somehow so my wife could see it, and if she wasn't able to go. And we were doing things like that, but I was also doing all the cooking, and I was arranging to have other things done that she wasn't able to do any longer. And eventually we had to have a hospital bed brought to our home, and she was in a hospital bed the last 7 years of her life, and she passed away in 2013 of complications due to MS. And that's a real speed dial version of the of a long process. But the thing that happened to me in the process of that was that I was drinking. I was drinking more than I told anybody. I was drinking more than I admitted to myself. And as she got sicker, I got sicker. We were Presbyterians, and so we didn't have to hide our drinking. It wasn't like we were, that I was on staff at a Baptist church where, that would have been a big, terrible secret. All my friends drank, my staff drank, everybody drank, and so that wasn't a big deal. We'd have staff Christmas parties at a place that served alcohol because they served alcohol, actually. But the reality of my drinking was very different than the people that I was with. My drinking was secret and private, and I lied about it eventually. I hid it. I was drinking to the point of not remembering things and making phone calls I didn't remember, and waking up in parts of the house I didn't start out in, and having some pretty embarrassing outcomes and unwanted consequences to my drinking, and I didn't know how to stop. And so I tried quitting several times, and then I quit trying to quit, and then eventually I just drank every day for 5 years straight. Didn't miss a day on purpose, and drank a lot, and got to a point where my wife told me that she couldn't afford to leave me, but she definitely needed to be away from me. So if I would let her move in with her parents and keep our legal address for her at our house, she could stay on my insurance, because she didn't want to divorce me because she needed my coverage, but she definitely couldn't be around me anymore. And no one other than my daughter really knew this was going on. And so I'm going to church every week, and I'm working out of my house, out of my office, so I can care for her at home. And we're doing all these things, worship conferences. I have songs and hymnals by then. I have, I think we had the theme song to Promise Keepers for a couple of years, and this kind of stuff. And I was doing all the great stuff and right stuff that I had moved to Nashville to do and wanted to do, and everything looked really good, and we looked great on paper, but we were a mess. My daughter resented me and was very emotionally disengaged from me and got into some things of her own, and I still thought that I was the victim, and because that was what I had to tell myself in order to justify the behavior I was going to engage in. And so finally at one point I just had to stop, and I had to tell some people the truth. And another long story short, I got help, and started seeing an addiction specialist and kind of an outpatient type of program, and in a 12-step program, certainly. And I got better. And but I waited a year to tell any of my fellow staff members what had happened, because I didn't want to fail in front of anybody. And I was also afraid. I was afraid that I'd lose my job. And I thought, well, I'm pulling the job off. If I could wait a year into my sobriety, maybe there's a statute of limitations for alcoholic worship leaders or something, that they don't have to, they can't fire you after a year of sobriety or something. So that's kind of how my self-care and my story and my new profession all kind of started blossoming even back then, I think. I would tell anybody that's looking at this and going, wow, that's some version of me, tell yourself the truth. Just tell yourself the truth, because you can't tell anybody else the truth until you tell yourself the truth first. And whether you go and admit it and do anything about it right away, that can come later. But at least tell yourself what you're doing, and ask yourself what the difference is between the authentic you and the persona you've created. Because I'm guessing the persona you've created is keeping you sick. That's the guy you send to do the job when you can't. That's the guy you send to church because you can't go. The authentic you doesn't have a place in that because there's too much conflict. So we create these personas that we send in our behalf, and they do the job until they can't. But they have to be paid off. There's a payoff in that. They've got to be medicated and they've got to be fed, and whatever that looks like in whatever form that is: alcohol, pornography, success, work addiction. I mean, name your thing. But they're gonna ask for something in return because they don't work for free.
Well, I hope David wasn't telling your story there, but if he was, or anywhere close, I'm going to challenge you to get some help, to talk to somebody, to open up and be honest and real. This is a big deal. And David lost a lot in the midst of it. And I don't want to see the same thing happen to you. So I want to challenge you, if he's telling anywhere close to a situation where you're at, find somebody that can offer you some real and practical and tangible help, that you will be able to pull through this with the help of God in the midst of it, and see a better outcome down the road.
Brought to you by myworshipleadingcoach.com.
Helping you to be more fully equipped as a worship leader.